My theory is that all those planes in the sky that you see with those trails, compared to like the other planes, are rockets or are spaceships being sent up into space.
So you've gone the other way.
I have.
So not only are they not chemtrails, but they're actually spaceships.
Or some kind of device to send things up into space, like satellites or whatnot.
Some people think satellites are just, they're not orbiting. They're actually just on helium balloons. They're just like floating around up there.
That would be interesting. A bunch of Lindberghs. Like, oh, it's what are those? Like the shooting stars that come down, meteor shower? No, those are balloons just blowing up.
Yeah, they popped and the satellites are coming down.
Welcome to Reformgelical, where the Reformed and Evangelicals meet. My name is Matt Williams. This is A.D. Robles, my co-host, co-conspiracy theorist.
Yes.
Chad,
how are you doing?
He's shaking his head at us. Chad, I told you we were going to let you down someday, and today is that day.
Someone once told me that the reason I have asthma is because of the chemtrails, but I'm just glad I have my inhaler.
Yeah, my brother says that's why we have cancer so much today.
Because big pharma. big
pharma.
They're behind it all.
Yeah. But I think there's a lot more going on in space than we think of. Like, come on. How big of an advantage is that from a military perspective? And we have just this one space station that we all cooperate on. We don't cooperate on anything on Earth. Why is space different?
That's very interesting that you say that, because it's very interesting that there is so much cooperation, theoretically speaking.
Theoretically, right? It's like, no, I'm sorry. They were just hacking. The Russians were hacking into our elections, and they're sending up our guys like for free or like just for a small fee. No, that's not happening. I'm sorry.
I saw someone, speaking of the chat, someone in the chat just said, Matt believes in aliens. Now, listen, I saw a very reputable source post an article about some like weird new devices that have shown up at Area 51, and you can see them from satellites. And what the article essentially put forward in a very serious way, and this is a real news outlet, that they're just like secret like planes that have been being developed, and that's what's there. It's not aliens; it's just secret planes.
Yeah, I could believe that.
Hey,
what's up, Liam? We're talking about our new conspiracy theory of the week. I don't believe in aliens. Although
that's not what Chatafonte says.
That's not what Chatafonte says. But I do think, maybe some of those things are demons or angels.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely a phenomenon. There's no question about it. People are seeing things, and I think, honestly, the whole idea that the people that see things are like these backwoods, like yokels, that's been debunked. That's not the case. All kinds of people see things, real people that are respectable, that are trustworthy. So I agree with you, Matt. I think that they're seeing some kind of a demonic entity.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even the Bible talks about that you could be entertaining angels and not knowing it, which is really trippy to think about.
What's also trippy is what Chad Fonte says: Federal Vision aliens.
Oh my goodness,
that is super trippy.
Oh, our Scott Clark's head just exploded.
What? Well, I'm not going to say anything.
Say it. We have to say our thoughts.
No. I'm not going to, because it was really stupid. But what I will say is, I did a video called. It was like a video about this whole situation and Doug Wilson and the Federal Vision and all this stuff. And I basically what I did was I spliced up a bunch of Ghostbusters pics together, or clips. And I had a copyright strike, not a strike, a copyright claim on the video, so I couldn't earn any money from it. But I just got it. Don't worry, I just got a Google Gmail that they took down the copyright claim, so it's all mine now.
There it is. Raking in those cents that you get from the ad.
25 cents a pop.
So I don't want to talk about Federal Vision too much, but since you brought it up, I think that we had a pretty good interview last week, and I saw the Doug Wilson, James White interview. Yeah. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah. I thought it was fantastic.
I thought it was fantastic as well. Although I wanted Doug to come on our show. Thanks a lot, Doug.
We're not at his level yet. Maybe one day. Next
week. And I talked to Brandon a little bit after, and he saw it, and he's going to write a follow-up article. But you know what I'm already starting to see from the R. Scott Clarks of the world is Doug Wilson's denial of what was written in that article and what Scott Clark believes, because that article was quoting our Scott Clark, is not enough. It is not enough for the outright denials, which makes me just suspect about this whole thing altogether. I'm like, okay, maybe you had some misunderstandings. Maybe you were really just being extra, I don't know, discerning. But that you can't just take a brother at his word is a little disconcerting to me. And this last thing, and then I want to get your thoughts on this, AD.
Sure.
I'm already starting to see this new, like trail of this where but he didn't really talk about the second kind of justification. I'm like, I've never even heard that part of the discussion. Like, what are you talking about? And there's like these rabbit trails, like, yes. He didn't really clarify these things. It's like, this can never end. It's a conspiracy theory that never ends.
No, you're 100% right. Are you done? Because I want to let you finish. You were going.
I'm done.
You were on a roll.
Yeah.
There.
No. Let's go. Conspiracy theory. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I saw Marcus Pittman tweet about that, and it's definitely right. This is something that there's nothing that Doug Wilson can do short of basically blow up his whole life that they'll accept. So I think that they would forgive him and accept his recanting if he stopped being a pastor, stopped writing books, stopped doing anything at all. Then they would accept it. That's what they want. The reality is that this is a never-ending thing. It'll never end. It'll never be good enough. And I think I've got a new theory as to what this is all about. You want to hear it?
Yeah, I do.
All right. This is just a theory of mine. So there's no evidence for this really, except for just my opinion. I think that people like R. Scott Clark and his ilk, and I'm going to put him in the category of the scholarly intelligentsia. They hate, if there's anything they hate, they sure hate someone who is uninitiated, uneducated in their opinion, didn't go to seminary, did not go through their official channels, is not in the guild, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
They hate when those people get taken seriously, because I think that there's a bit of a chip. And again, this is a theory. Like, this guy didn't do any of the work. He has none of the credentials that I have. And yet he's got a huge following, and they hate that. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of that going on, and it's just a theory. I don't know, but the way that people like R. Scott Clark like to puff up their credentials and then point out his lack of credentials tells me that that's a big part of this for them. They hate that. They hate that he's self-ordained. They hate that he has his own denomination. They hate that he didn't go to seminary, and yet people are following this guy.
Yeah, that's so right.
It's a guild. They've got a guild set up, and he's not in the guild.
Yeah, it's like a country club. And hey, you're not part of the boys. You're not welcome here. Go back to indentured servitude or whatever.
There's something else too. Want to hear the last thing?
Of course I do. You don't even have to ask. Just say it. Okay.
So scholars, there's two kinds of scholars. And regular Joe Six-Packs like myself who drink, Bud Light and, not the hoity-toity stuff. Cheers. Yeah. That looks like the hoity-toity stuff. But anyway, regular Joes like me, there's two kind of scholars. There's the kind that like to speak, let's see. They like to speak in such a way that they assert their intellectual dominance over you. And they use big words, and they use complex ideas that they think that you don't understand. And a lot of us do understand them. We don't like when we're talked down to like that. Doug doesn't do that. He's a smart man, but somehow he can take these complex ideas and talk like a regular person. He's got things going on in his head that I've never read even a tenth of what he's read, but somehow he can talk to me like a regular guy.
Yeah.
And I know that they would say that's part of the problem. He's oversimplifying, and that's how he's leading you astray. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
People like me, regular Joes, we don't like to be talked down to, even by people that are really intelligent. Right. And a guy like Doug is really intelligent, but does not talk down to people.
Right. You know who that reminds me of? Do you have an idea?
No.
Donald Trump. He is, right? He is not part of the elite.
He's not in the guild.
He's not in the guild, and they hate him for it. He didn't rise up through the political channels. He came in on his own. He didn't come in through the Republican Party. He didn't come through the establishment. I wouldn't say he's a genius, but I think he's a smart dude. I don't think he's stupid, and he talks just like the common folk.
Yeah, I think there are more than a couple similarities between Doug and Trump. Now, that's not to disparage Doug at all, because there's lots of problems with Trump. We get that.
Or Trump. Let's be honest. We're not saying Trump's federal vision here, guys. So
whoa, please.
Whoa.
I would never insult Donald in that way. But anyway, but yeah, no, you're so right. You're so right. And people that think Trump's an idiot, they're idiots. He's obviously not.
Right.
But he can talk to regular people, and people don't feel like they're being talked down to. That's a skill, man. That's a real skill. And honestly, in my opinion, a real scholar can do that kind of stuff. Can make complex issues understandable for a regular idiot like me. Well, and that's the mark that you actually do understand the thing that you're talking about.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. That is the sign that you have mastery over a subject, is that you can boil it down to its simplest terms and communicate it to people.
Chad Fonte says this. I keep trying to call you Chad Fontes, but Chad Fonte says this. My problem with Brandon's point of view is that in my mind, the view of the covenant that federal vision holds versus historic confessionalism is similar to the difference between dispensationalism and covenant theology, not a first order issue. Chad, this is exactly right. This is exactly right. And a lot of people are pointing this out. It's like, okay, so we all agree. Everyone here agrees that federal vision is an error, like hardcore federal vision. It's an error. Okay, so no one in this chat. Well, I'm not going to speak for the people in the chat, but you and me, Matt.
Yeah.
We there's problems, but like there's got to be a third category here. Like he has problems. So does every Lutheran, in my opinion. So does every Anglican, in my opinion. Does that mean that they're automatically heretics? Because that's not how we treat Lutherans. But for some reason, we treat Doug this way. That's why I know there's something else going on. There's something else going on because we don't treat Lutherans like this. Now, you might say, well, Luther didn't believe in this is something that I saw a video on. Luther didn't believe in baptismal regeneration. And a Lutheran scholar's like, are you out of your mind? Are you serious? We all do. And that's where we got it from. That's why we're Lutherans. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, so is that the dividing line? Well, it is for Doug. If Doug believes it, then it's heresy. But if, Joe Schmo Lutheran believes it, well, they're probably all right. Makes no sense.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's an error, but it's like one of those errors. Not a first order issue. It could lead to serious heresy, but it doesn't have to.
Right. And it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa. How did I get into this heresy talk in the comments? I'm going to kick you guys all out. Get out of here with that.
No, Chad can stay.
Oh, okay. Chad can stay. What's funny is that, to me, what happened, and it seems like a lot of this revolves around what happened pre-fall, and there's like some fancy word for it. I don't even remember off the top of my head. But to me, that seems like such a small issue that's like more semantical arguments. Like it's fun to talk about over a cigar and a nice little drink in a country club. But to me, like baptism, infant baptism or not, seems like a much bigger issue. But we're not throwing around the H word with each other.
Sure. That's a good it's a good point. And I think so. So here's the thing. I would say that what happened in the garden is very foundational to a lot of things. But for the regular man in the pew, for a guy like me, guy like you, Brandon was trying to make it seem like this is going to have all kinds of practical implications in your life. And it might. But the reality is that a guy like you and a guy like me, let's just say we don't understand the covenant of works completely. Is it possible that we're doing the right things? We're increasing in holiness. We're being sanctified by the Holy Spirit. We're doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. We're raising our families. We're engaging in culture, all these things correctly without having an understanding of what happened in that garden. It's very possible. It's very possible. And the specter that Brandon was saying, there's all these problems and the thing. And I know a couple times, Matt, you asked for the problem. And it wasn't really forthcoming.
Right.
It was kind of like this. Well, there could be. I'm like, well, yeah, there could be a lot of things. We're talking about what's happening, though.
Yeah.
Big Nick, born and raised Lutheran, now PCA. Amazing how we now see it as a cultural religion and Catholic light. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I love Lutherans, by the way. Don't mistake what I'm saying. I think they have some errors in their theology, but they're great people.
Yeah. Hey, we both think we have errors in each other's theology, but we still hang out.
You more than me, though.
Yeah, of course. Definitely more than me. Chad was asking me if I'm a dispy.
Yes.
I grew up that way, so I probably have a lot of things to work out in that sense.
We all did. Basically.
Yeah, but I really do believe, and I'm starting to process and see things through a covenant. Although the covenant covenantal thinking, covenantal theology. Is that how you
Wait a minute? The covenant of works or the covenant of life?
Yeah.
Or the gracious covenant of works?
I don't know who was saying it, but somebody was saying that it actually says it both in the Westminster Confession.
Yeah, the Westminster Standards, it does. Yep.
Yeah. But anyways, I think there is dispensations in the true sense of there's different ways that God kind of stewarded things, but underneath the covenants as a whole. That is my opinion. Oh, did you just get it out?
No, just in case.
Oh.
Just in case.
Okay. So, and then, so that's my stance right now. Fully transparent. That's where I'm at. Okay. I did not mean to spend that much time on federal vision, but I think that was good.
It's all good.
That was good. Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about something far less controversial: miracles. 2 big stories came out this week. One really positive and one very confusing to me and maybe a little disturbing. I'll be honest. The first one, let's talk about the positive first. I like ending on a negative note. Jeff Durbin and had please tell me you're laughing at the comments and not.
Yes. No.
Okay, good.
No, you.
I'm going to get all self-conscious here. Jeff Durbin is adopting a daughter, and she was pronounced, or they were diagnosing her with spina bifida, where like her spine was going to be exposed. And there's like, it's a really big deal. There was a bunch of doctors waiting for the delivery to happen, and then they were going to rush her into surgery. And there's like this whole medical team and a medical staff that was prepared. They were 100% sure that this was going to happen. And she was born, and she didn't have it. And it was like this huge miracle, really. Or if you're a negative person, you can just say a bunch of bad doctors who misdiagnosed. But let me just stop here and say, did you see the video of it, AD? And what are your initial thoughts of it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not a crier, but I had a tear in my eye. I'm not going to lie. It was just pretty amazing.
Uh-huh.
What I thought of, listen, we all kind of, so first of all, we all kind of know that miracles happen, and it's amazing every time, though. That's what a miracle is.
I just never know if you see sensationalists, so
yeah, whatever. But anyway, listen. So the first thing I thought of, to be perfectly honest, is I was happy. It was very emotional video, but man, I couldn't help but go to think about this. Where how many times has someone been aborted when the doctors say they have X?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you shouldn't abort your baby. You shouldn't kill a child because they have a disease, obviously. But so many people do think that that's a legitimate reason to do it. How many kids have been killed by doctors that misdiagnose something in the womb?
Mm-hmm.
That's
a lot.
That's the
I
thing,
hear those
man.
stories a lot, honestly.
Yeah. That makes me sad, man. That really does.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie either. It really did bring a tear to my eye as well. Before I had my children, and I would cry over like Christian things when I was a Christian. Before I was a Christian, I didn't cry over anything. But then like when God would speak to me or something, I would cry a little bit sometimes. And then now though, with having kids, anytime it is something soft with kids, I'm bawling like a baby. Oh my goodness. But anyways, yeah. And that's such a good point though, AD. Like, even if it's true though, like you think of, what is it? Iceland? I think it's Iceland, that they are 100% abortions for kids with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And they disguise it as a cure. They're ridding Iceland of babies. Like they found the cure for Down syndrome.
Yeah, just kill them all. That's the cure.
That's the solution. But that's kind of what we do with testing in America, right? Where, so you want to kill this baby, right? Because their life is going to be worse than a normal child.
And don't hear me saying that well, you could have a miracle too, so you shouldn't kill your baby. No, you shouldn't kill your baby at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like who are you to decide what kind of a life is worth living? That's God's decision, not yours. So don't hear me saying that, but it just makes it's almost like an extra tragedy to know for a fact that doctors are saying this and people think that this is what they have to do, and it's not even true in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just for some reason it seems like an extra tragedy. I don't know. It probably isn't. Like, if I really sat down and think about the philosophically, it shouldn't be an extra tragedy. But somehow it feels that way to me, that someone is doing that to their own child because of a lie in the first place, or a misdiagnosis. Right.
And I had my wife doing jumping jacks off the camera, correcting me that it was a boy, not a girl.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks for correcting him, because I was like, I'm pretty sure it was a boy, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm not 100%.
Come on, you got to
sure.
say it. You got to correct me. You got to fact check
but I
me
wasn't
here.
sure.
Oh, and by the way, is my sound sounding okay? Is it messed up?
Yeah, it sounds
okay, because it really bugs me. I don't understand that at all. It's really annoying. Okay. But so I wanted to say this, though, because this is personal to me. My brother has Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And he was actually adopted. He was a crack baby and had Down syndrome, and the mother decided to keep it, put it up for adoption. We fostered the baby and then adopted the baby. And let me just tell you this. It is sad to me that we think that that baby has any less of value, because having a Down syndrome brother, God is used in such amazing ways. And to think that God doesn't have a purpose for somebody's life that has any kind of disability is ridiculous. And I almost wonder sometimes if it is kind of goes back to our thinking about ourselves, that we're so great because we can do all these cool things. And, oh man, God gets to use me because of my skills. Yeah. Because if we really were humble and realized that it wasn't about us, then we wouldn't be thinking that way about disabled kids and disabled, Down syndrome kids or whatever. Yeah. And just to say, and I don't want to go on a too big of a rant about this, but like the things that God has used my brother to teach me has been foundational for the rest of my life. And if he would have been deprived in my life, I would be significantly missing out on things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard. Yes, there's struggles. There's different challenges. But man, I would be definitely a different person for the worse for that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And I think you're so right about the humility. I mean, you're right. We do kind of have this natural idea that, well, the way I am is just like, this is great. Like I can accomplish so many things. Like, but really, again, we have to be thinking like it's not like God decides what you do and who you are and what you're like and the skills you have and the skills you don't have and the weaknesses you have and when you leave the earth and stuff like that and how you're going to be used in his plan for his people. Mm-hmm. Like God decides. So if that means that you're just a pleasant, and I even just in the language I just used there, it just kind of displays my lack of humility. I was just about to say, you're just a pleasant, Walmart greeter, and that's the job that you have. And I said it like that's just nothing. You know what I mean? But like, we don't like God has a purpose for every person, right? For his church, a purpose for every person, and their differences, and we always want to prioritize things and make ours position more important than it is.
Yeah, we play this comparison game all the time.
And I just literally did it right now as I'm trying to make the point about not doing it. It just comes so so natural to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what does C.S. Lewis say about it? It's a really good quote. Comparison is the thief of joy. Love that quote. That's so good. Yeah. So okay, another tangent. Apparently this is going to be a tangent show. I wanted to nail you down on your thoughts. So are you, first of all, forget miracles for a second, just spiritual gifts, not to say that this healing was a spiritual gift by any means, but are you a cessationalist? You don't believe that there's a certain portfolio of gifts that are around anymore because the canon's closed?
Yeah. So I'm a cessationist. So I don't think that there's like miracle workers running around here.
Okay. So you don't I don't think there's like spiritual healers or, you know, what you think about witchcraft or whatever. But so in 1 Corinthians where it talks about, I'm assuming like healing, tongues, miracles. Yeah. Those are not gifts that the Spirit is using in people anymore.
Not necessarily. So basically the position that I hold is I think it's pretty common. It's basically that the signs like healing and that kind of thing, that was given to the apostles and the people of that time, because that's how God's word was authenticated back then. They didn't have the New Testament canon. And so these people were coming out preaching, and the way that you knew that they were really from God is they would do these miracles, right? Essentially, it's a little bit oversimplified, but that's essentially what it is. And so now that we have the canon, we have the word of God, it self-authenticates. So when we read it, we know this is the word of God. We don't have those sign gifts anymore because there's not a need to authenticate God's word. It authenticates itself. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that someone couldn't be healed or someone couldn't speak a tongue, to communicate a truth to somebody else. And I don't mean like the gibberish tongues. I mean like a different language that they don't know. That doesn't mean
that Acts 2 tongues. Or was Acts 2, was it?
Right.
Pentecost, Pentecost, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And yeah, Chad Fontes puts out the essential verse, long ago, at many times, in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets, but in these last days, he has spoken to us by his son.
Sounds like a dispensationalist, honestly.
This is the tangent show, I guess. But anyway,
yes, it is.
Yeah, but that's the essential position.
Got it. And from my position,
I'm cautious about it, by the way.
What? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm cautious about it. So I'm not
okay.
I'm not like the kind of person, and I don't have any beef with you if you're one of these people, but that is skeptical about every story I hear. I say it could happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So this is my position. I think that the Spirit can move like he's always moved in people, not that he ever is going to. And I actually have a kind of weird, like, I think there's definitely ways that the Spirit works through us in specific ways. Like if you're a pastor, you have the gift of teaching, the Spirit is going to primarily work through you in that. But if it's true that we all have the same Spirit and it's truly a spiritual gift, then we should all have the same opportunities to use gifts, even if it's not predominantly one area, like don't have the gift of teaching or something to that effect. Because if it's all the Spirit working and we have the Spirit, then in theory, right, we would have access to all of the actions of the Spirit. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying.
Okay. And then also, so I do think that those gifts do happen, and honestly more than not so much in America, I would say, but like you hear about stories in Africa and things like that, which maybe has something to do with just the same things from before of just there's more of a validity to spiritual stuff, like more witchcraft and like even in a negative sense. But I think, again, the canon's closed, so it's not about adding anymore, but it's more about application of what's already been closed in canon. So that's my perspective as of right now. But again, I'm open to correction and changing my mind. Not going to die on that hill.
Chad Fonte says, book club should be Strange Fire by Johnny Mack. I think it's important to see how the gifts were applied in the New Testament. Those with the gift always had it. They could heal whoever they wanted, etc. So the first time I even started thinking about this in a serious way was that whole conference situation, the Strange Fire conference. And then the book came out and all of that. And so like I had always been sort of skeptical because I came from Pentecostal circles, like my family, all my grandparents and stuff. It's not uncommon for Puerto Ricans to be involved in Pentecostal stuff. And so like, my grandfather to some extent still is involved in some of that stuff. So I was always kind of skeptical because I saw the insanity, but I didn't really think about it at a deep level. Yeah. And I'm not one of these that thinks all charismatics are heretics either. That's not who I am. And some people have criticized me and said, well, that's just because your family is in it. You're not thinking clearly. And maybe that's true. Maybe I'm biased, but anyway. Side note.
Honestly, I think a lot of that too can be cultural. And I think a lot of Pentecostal churches try to create it, obviously.
Yeah.
Like the slaying of the Spirit and all that.
Definitely.
I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
But I don't think
I've talked to a buddy that admits that he would do that all the time. He would pretend to be slaying the Spirit. He would pretend to do these things. And he just thought that that's what you did.
Yeah.
And
I totally see that because people are taught that. They're shown that on TV. They're being taught that in their churches. Yeah. And there's probably people that are legitimately seeking God and think, well, if I'm going to be seeking God and legitimate, I need to do this stuff. So I'm going to do this stuff because that's all I know.
Well, and they also, some of these people, especially some of the shadier ones, will tell you that what you got to do in order to start doing it is just do it yourself. And eventually the Holy Spirit will do it.
Yeah.
And that's just a very weird thing to say. Here's something I will say. I've said this before on my channel, but I'll say it to everyone here. There are different kinds of Pentecostals. I was talking to my grandfather once, and my grandfather, he reads the Bible every single day for hours a day. He prays for hours a day. He's just one of these very faithful guys, right? Mm-hmm. And but he came from this kind of Pentecostal background. One day he was telling me about, so my aunt died, and she was young, and he was telling me how difficult it was during that time and all this stuff. And then he says, and then I had a word from the Lord. And on the inside, I'm rolling my eyes, right? And what he does is he just quotes scripture, right? He just quotes it. And he's telling me that this is his word from the Lord. And I'm thinking, well, this is legitimate, though, because what the Holy Spirit is doing inside him is bringing to remembrance scripture. Mm-hmm. And that is a literal word from the Lord. Scripture is a literal word from the Lord. So I think there are some Pentecostals like that when they say they have these words, what they're doing is they're just remembering Bible verses, remembering these things. Then there are others That'll be like, I had a word from the Lord, and there's pirate ships and sharks and cannons. And then that's something different.
Yeah. My wife jokes about that. And it's like, it's so funny, Matt. And this is my wife talking to me. It's so funny. Your memory is the worst memory I've ever seen in my life, but you can recall scripture like nobody else. And obviously they're not like nobody else, but to the point of, it's obviously not me. It's the Spirit like bringing to mind these things of talking about, because my memory is shot in every other aspect besides that. I've been going to a, what they call a Reformed Pentecostal church. They were part of Sovereign Grace. I know, right? And they have a microphone for during worship where they have pastors up there. And if people feel like they have a word of knowledge or something to that effect, they can go talk to the pastor. And if the pastor, thinks it's cool, then they'll let them speak or whatever. And more often than not, when it's before the sermon or whatever, it aligns with kind of the message of what's already going to be talked about, which is kind of interesting. But so speaking about shadiness, Pentecostalness, the second story of the week, and I'm sure you guys have heard about it because it's kind of interesting. Bethel worship leader Callie Helen, however you say her last name, has called upon the global church to pray for her young daughter, Olive, who died over the weekend. Her and her husband, Andrew, are believing that their daughter can be raised back to life by the power of Jesus Christ and are asking brothers and sisters in the faith to join with them in praying for a miracle. Wanting to bring their daughter back to life. And before we, throw this person under the bus and make fun of them, which we could do.
I'm not going to do that.
You're not going to do? Oh, okay. Maybe Chad in the comments or Liam. Big Nick's kind of quiet today. Oh no, he's right there. I missed his comment. But there are times in the New Testament where the dead have come back to life, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when Jesus died and was resurrected, there was like 500 people walking around. So, hey, if you want to pray for it, is that a bad thing or what?
No, it's not a bad thing. But well, I'll let you continue. So I'll just say no.
Well, I just want to see what you had to say because I'll give my opinion in a second, and I'm just trying to be more positive about it than I really am.
No. I me too. So on the one hand, like I don't want to make fun of someone who has the faith to believe that God can raise their dead child from the dead, and that's just such a horrible situation. I can't even imagine what she's thinking.
I know. Let me say this: like, if my child died, I'd probably have those thoughts and prayers to like bring this child back to me. Like, I would be devastated. I wouldn't even know what to say. So my heart does go out to her, and I feel totally bad. I'm not trying to make light of the situation.
So, but the thing is, like, you can't really disconnect this from the teaching that she's under. And if you know anything about Bethel teaching, it's very much this uber charismatic, like God's will for you is never to be sick, is never to do these things, never to, to be poor and stuff like that. And it's just super dangerous.
So it's like prosperity gospel, health and wealth kind of lane.
Yeah. And super charismatic. Like they put glitter in the heating vents and rain it down on people and say it's the glory of the Lord.
Do they really?
Yeah. Wow. They do the same thing with feathers and say it's angel feathers. Just stuff like that, like the wackiest stuff you could imagine happens here. And it's like, so you give this woman this expectation that this is going to happen. And, if you just have a faith kind of thing, that makes me really sad. So you can't like divorce this situation from that teaching, because you just see like the teaching has consequences. You know what I mean?
It totally does. And you know what I was also thinking too about this is it's kind of selfish. Like my wife and I had a miscarriage, and so we've struggled with this. It hasn't been like a child that we've formed a relationship over the years. It's still our child. And to think though that if you believe that your child's in heaven, like calling your child back, that's kind of selfish, right? I mean, I would, if I was in heaven, I wouldn't want to come back to earth.
I hadn't thought of it that way.
Like, yeah, it would hurt. I would miss them. But I'm like depriving them of the presence of Jesus. If you truly believe in heaven, if you believe in all these things, like, why would you want your kid back? I don't know.
I got called out by Liam. I'm tweeting right now.
Oh, you are? What did Liam say?
He just called me out that I'm on Twitter.
Oh, you're on Twitter. Yeah, he is. I am taking 100% responsibility for that too.
No. Like I'm literally tweeting at this moment.
What? That's why we are losing viewers. It's because they're like, if the host is going to be on Twitter and not paying attention to the show, why would we even listen? I'm just kidding. We're actually growing. Like last week's show, I think we hit 1,000 or something views.
So basically, it just turns into a Federal Vision debate show.
Yeah, basically.
That's the lesson you learned from that.
I know, totally. All right, so I think we've closed it. Miracles can happen.
Yes,
we're debatable on how they happen, but it's definitely not happening like Bethel thinks it is happening.
No, no. There's no gold dust glory cloud. No.
Oh man, what would they do in a building without air conditioned vents? Their tricks would be gone.
Well, that's why they're in one. No, I don't know. I don't know what they're up to.
All right, so this story is actually really fascinating to me, and
probably because I'm tweeting.
Probably because you. So get off Twitter so we get better reception. You actually look good to me, AD. I think next line. In Virginia, there is like a mini microcosm of what's happening in the whole country. There's a big division happening between the cities of Virginia, the liberal parts, and the rural parts, where they are passing these laws that some citizens are saying are unconstitutional. The what are they? I was going to say red herring laws. No, red flag laws, the universal background check laws. And they're threatening to use the National Guard against local law enforcement that refuse to enforce the laws. So what the local law enforcement is doing in these rural counties, like Tazewell County is one of them, they're making sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment. So the liberals have the sanctuary cities for immigration and marijuana and all those things. But we have a conservative county and some other counties that are passing sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment. They passed 2 resolutions December 10th. The sanctuary city for Second Amendment, 76 out of 95 counties in Virginia passed this. So it's a large amount of counties doing this. It's not just one whack job county. It's a majority of them. 9 out of 38 cities, 13 towns, all passing these resolutions. And the Tazewell County has formed a militia with 200 citizens supporting it and unanimously passing it. So we have a really interesting and also serious, scary, maybe a little bit, that we're actually forming a militia that is going against what was supposed to be the militia, the National Guard of the state. Very interesting. What do you think about this, AD?
What do I think about it? I think it's great.
Okay.
I don't like the tension, but this is how you beat people like this. This is how you beat totalitarians, liars, thieves, criminals, even if they're legal criminals. You just don't comply. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You just say no. That's I'm not doing that. You know, I'm not doing that, and that's all there is to it. And basically, you know, I mean, look, this is the kind of thing that could start conflicts, right? Like, obviously, there's a risk of a civil conflict of some kind. Yeah. But most of the time, all you got to do is just say no, and that's the end of it. What are you going to do? Are you going to bomb the countryside of Virginia?
Yeah, right. But
we're just not going to do. So the liberals understand this because they know conservatives are pretty much gutless most of the time.
Right.
So they're going to say, okay, we're going to have a sanctuary city. What are you going to do about it? Come round up the illegal immigrants? No, you're not. And we don't.
Right.
You're right. We don't do that. And so, you know, conservatives need to understand that sometimes bullies just need to be told no.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have my guns, and that's all there is to it.
Right. And I think a lot more of these situations are going to need to happen for these bullies to back down.
Yeah.
And I agree with you 100%. I actually am really excited about it. I'm not scared about it.
Yep.
Because if you even think about it, like, who is the National Guard? It's a majority of military people.
Yeah.
And the military people are pretty pro Second Amendment.
Yeah.
They're pretty conservative.
I would like to think that we wouldn't have to worry about them, but I'm not so sure about that. Like, they're all pro Second Amendment, but there are always a certain amount of people that are just servants of the state and they won't do anything else. Not all of them, obviously, but this is how totalitarians operate because they always have people that are loyal to them.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but you see that actually, So that's not why I'm not worried, but I'm not worried because I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really, I think a lot of times it's like the bully that some bullies will fight you and they don't care. They just want to cause trouble. But most bullies, if you show a little backbone, that's all you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll stop.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because all these people in the big city, they don't know anything about guns. And yeah, they do have like the National Guard and they probably might have some people to stand by. But the liberals are the ones without the guns. And a lot of them don't even know what a gun sounds like. All they have is movie references. So like if it ever did escalate more than what it is now, but more than like not Ted Bundy, but what is it? The Buddy Ranch? What was it? The group? There's this ranch in Nevada over property rights.
Yeah.
Buddy, I don't know. Whatever.
I don't remember the name, but I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Like,
yeah.
Where they won. They backed down and they didn't go to jail, I believe.
You just gotta stand up and just say no.
Yeah, that's right. And you have to, because this is going to continue to happen until we say no and not be scared of the consequences of it. But so I wanted to talk about this going to our spheres of sovereignty from a biblical perspective. When is it okay to do this? When is it okay to say no to the bully versus submit to what God has appointed to be the governor and be the head?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a very heated discussion. So a lot of people will say, well, as long as the law doesn't directly conflict with your duties before God, then you have to listen. I don't subscribe to that.
I think used to be that.
Yeah. That's a lot of people are. And it makes sense. It has a certain kind of air of logic to it. But I don't think that's the case at all. So as far as let's just imagine. So sometimes it's easier to think about complex questions when you think of an extreme example, right? So let's just say one day that the government said, we're going to have 100% tax rate. So you are now my slave officially.
Right.
And so we owed 100% of our income to taxes. I don't think it would be a sin to start black markets. I don't think it would be a sin to buy black market items, to sell black market labor, to avoid this 100% slave tax thing. If you needed it, if you needed like to buy some bread and you didn't have, you know what I mean? Like whatever it is, I don't think that would necessarily be a sin. I think I think we have to understand that like in general, we should lean towards submitting to government, but so it's not about revolution or rebellion, but this is kind of a non-answer, but but people need to be convinced in their own minds what things that they're going to be willing to do and what things they're not going to be willing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love that you admitted that was a non-answer. That was great.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, for a lot of Christians, like, well, why don't you just give up your guns? Mm-hmm. And for many Christians, like, well, because one of my God-given duties is to protect my family, and this is the way that I do it. Yeah. Now, technically, does the Bible say you need to do it with a gun? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, you could definitely go the John MacArthur. I mean, not John MacArthur, the John Piper.
Yeah,
where he's like, yeah, if my wife was getting raped, I'd just let it happen because I'm not supposed to fight people. I'm not supposed to turn the other cheek.
Right. Yeah. So when you think of sphere sovereignty, for example, so the government says you can't do it with a gun, but you need one because you live in a part of town. It's like the Wild West, and you decided to have one, even though the government said you couldn't. Mm-hmm. And your thought process is, well, I'm obeying my sphere sovereignty to protect my family, and I needed a gun. Could some people argue that you shouldn't have done that? I think so, but I think that you're on good footing with God on that one.
Let me ask you this question, and this is probably a question you've never heard before. So if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I hate setting my co-host up. I try to set you up in a way that just you look great. So might be a random question. Do you think that the spheres of sovereignty have the same legitimacy as nations do with each other? So in the Old Testament, Israel would go to battle with other nations. God would ask them to destroy other nations. Or when there was a nation that attacked them, they had the right to go against them. They didn't submit to a government. It was a completely different sphere. So if the government was imposing on my family sphere, for instance, like in Texas, where the Child Protective Services took their homeschooling kid away.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Like, do I, as a steward of my family, the leader of my family, that God has given me the duty to protect them, do I have as much validity to defend myself against the attacking sphere as another nation would against attacking me?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. It strikes me to say yes.
Me
So,
too.
so I would say, like, in that situation, that it's a very horrible situation. Imagine the government coming to your house and taking your kid because you wouldn't turn him into a girl. And let's just say it's not going to happen, and come and get him. If that's what you're going to do, then we're going to go to war. If that's what you decide to do, it might not be the smartest thing for you to do necessarily.
Right.
There might be other options that might be more wise, but I can't imagine that you're going to get to heaven and God's gonna be like, no, you should just give them to the state so that that your sons can become girls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine that's going to be a problem. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or like, because I could easily imagine situations where you want to run from your government. And that running in itself is illegal because the government makes it illegal to run from them.
Right. Yeah.
That's an abusive system, right? So,
for sure.
So yeah, so like, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to think about that, but it strikes me as the answer is no.
That and I think I've been thinking about a lot because there's that story with the man who was trying to get his kid not to transgender or to transition, and his mom wanted them to. And then there was the other case where, because they were homeschooled and they weren't getting vaccinated, the Child Protective Services took them and they didn't see him for, I think it was 9 months to a year.
Yeah.
The kid, like, no abuse. The kid couldn't even stay with a relative. Just took him. And I don't know if it's just my personality or something inside me that is just thinking through this and preparing or thinking of how I would handle this, is like, over my dead body.
Yeah. So think about it this way. So let's just say the state awarded, you're married to a crazy woman and the state awards custody of your child to the crazy woman, and the crazy woman's going to turn him into a girl. Mm-hmm. If you hatch a scheme in your mind and you take the kid, you go to their house when they're sleeping, you take the kid and you skip the border to Mexico or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. The state will say you have kidnapped that kid. I do not think that would be kidnapping in God's eyes. I don't even think it'd be close to kidnapping in God's eyes. That'd be rescuing a defenseless child.
Right.
So that would be an example of intentionally, quote unquote, going to war with the sphere of government because you're not obeying them. You're skipping town against their orders. I don't think God sees it the same way the state sees it, because the state isn't God.
100%.
You know what 100%. I mean?
And I think if you take it to an obvious example in our culture today of like Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, of sneaking people out that were being abused as slaves, being murdered and all that stuff. It was against the state law. It was against the government.
Yep.
But I don't think God is being like,
no,
oh, you should have listened to the person I appointed.
Yeah.
And I think that applies to our families as well. I think it applies to our churches in the sense that, like, if ever the government says you can't assemble together, or, you have to say this, you have to bow down and worship this, or whatever it is. It's like, no, we're not going to do it. We're going to find ways around it.
Yep.
And I think that's not only okay with God, but what God requires of us.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think that these are complex questions, and they need to be discussed, and they are being discussed, and they're directly relevant to every person.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, Big Nick, do you notice that they're quick to take sons? I believe it is along the same lines of when Pharaoh tried to wipe out the male Israelites and when Herod tried to wipe out Jesus by killing all the boys under 2.
Well, you see, the thing about that too, Big Nick, and maybe you've thought of this, but I think a lot of people that read that story about Pharaoh, they don't take it to the next. What was happening there is Pharaoh was trying to, that was an attempt at genocide, essentially. So you get rid of the males, and then you marry the women, and then the women become Egyptians. Like, that's the idea there. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think you're right. Taking the sons, that's a way to sort of like rob the next generation, so to speak, and change it, really, because we're all patriarchs here, right?
Yeah, I definitely am.
But yeah, I think you're right. It's the same kind of mentality to destroy the next generation.
I'm definitely not going to make an equivalence by saying this, but I think the results are similar. That's what we're kind of doing today with education. is the education system is discipling and ripping them away from Christianity and reproducing a child that's going to be subservient to the state, subordinate to the state. And I saw a great meme. I forgot something to the effect of, you're not going to get an education from the state that is going to empower you to overthrow them. Something to that effect. And I think that's true too. It's like they're targeting the people that could fight back in that case as well. Just, it looks different. The actual practicality of it is different, but I think the intentions are the same, if that makes sense.
I think you're right. And you know, Big Nick is talking about an extreme example. They're quick to take sons and try to convince them that they're girls. But there's a low key way to do this too. You don't have to necessarily make them transition. You just have to make them act like girls. And what you do is you put them into a school where basically the behavior that comes naturally to girls is the standard of how the boys should act as well. Make them sit in a seat, sit quietly, talk about their feelings, talk about what the book means to them, stuff like that. Stuff that men are little boys are naturally not interested in.
Right.
And if they do something like, so let's say they have an art project. It's easy to see a situation like this, an art project, and the boy starts drawing what boys like to draw, a gigantic robot crushing some innocent people, and the building's on fire, and there's just chaos and destruction. That's how you get sent to the counselor's office, and they write you a Prozac prescription because they expect you to act like a girl,
right?
And it's like so there's low key ways to quote unquote transition too.
Yeah, for sure. And like the ADHD thing too.
Yeah.
It's like I hear, I mean, I'm sure girls have been prescribed the medication and diagnosed with ADHD, but to me, it seems like it's a lot more of boys being told to stop doing your nature, sit down, stop being active, all of those things as well. It's very interesting times that we live in. All right, I want to jump out of order of what we were going to talk about because I really want to get to this one. Netflix. I titled these on a day that I was just really proud of all my headings. And so I named this one, Netflix is at War with God. I was like, oh, that's a good one. But anyways, basically what it is there is this Brazilian film that portrays Jesus as gay. And I believe Mary does drugs to some effect. And before we get into what should our response be as Christians, because obviously, you know, that's not good. I want to explain kind of like with some of how this works. So Netflix has their own Netflix movies where they produce their own movies, but there is also, and then Netflix does this, Amazon does this, where they will buy movies from independent filmmakers and people that want to submit their movies. So like Right in the Dance, for example, by Wilson's Kid, he could sell that to Netflix and Netflix can do it. So it's not Netflix that's producing it, but they will platform it and buy it. And that is the case with this movie. It was a Brazilian movie, a Brazilian filmmaker. I don't know if it's in Portuguese, but a Brazilian filmmaker made this where they were portraying Jesus as gay. Mary was doing drugs. And when it's got criticism, I mean, I think there's like a petition going out where over 1.2 million people have signed it, telling them to take it down. And the film producer responded, actually, I'm sorry. The person that acted as Jesus said that you guys are just being homophobic, obviously, right? So my question is not, should we watch the movie? Obviously, I think we can all stipulate that we shouldn't be watching the movie, giving it views in any way. But what do we do with Netflix in that situation? And I guess this is a bigger point of, when do we boycott something that is integrated into our lives? Is this a line that is crossed, that we shouldn't be even giving money to Netflix, watching Netflix? What would you say,
AD? So honestly, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I think that if someone wants to boycott Netflix over this, go for it. I'm not a big boycotter in general.
Okay.
I could see a strategic boycott where like there's something like, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain what I'm trying to say, but I'm just not a big boycotter in general. So okay. I think I might have like an automatic subscription to Netflix through my cable. I don't watch it. But I'm not the kind of guy that's going to go cable company, get rid of my Netflix right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not me.
Yeah.
I don't know really what else to say about that.
Right. And I like, it really bothers me because it's like, it's our savior. It's Jesus.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And I am in a similar situation as I have access to Netflix. I don't pay for it, but I do have access, and I have watched it. I do watch it a lot. I've been going through The Office about 10 times now, which is phenomenal, by the way. And I don't understand, like, it kind of had like a revival where the kids that never got to see it on TV have started watching it and catching on, and they actually love it. So they might come back or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's neither here nor there.
I think if there's like, so, if the purpose of the boycott was to like, so there's like the cancel boycott where it's just basically like a blackmail. Like, I'm going to withhold my money until you do this exactly what I want you to do, and then I will give you your money again. Like, that to me just
Yeah.
But if there's like a strategic boycott that you could think of, that would be like, if we do this, they will go out of business, or they will stop this ridiculous nonsense forever. And we're not going to give them another red cent until they just say, look, we're not putting out social justice material anymore related to homosexuals. We're not pushing it anymore. We just won't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see how a boycott like this could do that. It's just like, it almost seems like a blackmail. It's like, well, we really like Netflix, and so we want to keep doing Netflix. So just take down the gay Jesus thing, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, we'll go watch the nudity movies and all the cussing stuff. We'll be cool then.
Like, if we could think of a boycott situation where it's like, okay, get this stuff off forever, just do it. Mm-hmm. It's just not going to happen, though. You know what I mean? Like, we're not in that position. We're just not in that time in our culture to be able to throw our weight around that way.
Yeah, I think we need to understand how much power and leverage we have in our culture, and we definitely don't have any. If you think about the boycotts that we've had, Target, remember there was a huge outcry against Target, not just Christians, but just sane people all over the place that were saying that all the bathrooms are going to be transgender friendly. Yeah. And so if you are taking your kid to Target and your little baby girl is in the girls' room, they could be peeing next to a dude. Yeah. Because he feels like a girl. And there's this huge outrage, and there was this huge boycott. And honestly, I stopped going to Target for like a month because I was like, I'm principled about it. But Target is doing better than ever right now.
Yeah. I can give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Actually, I just thought of one.
Okay.
So there was in our local, where I used to live in Brooklyn, there was a supposedly a nail salon, but it was a place where prostitutes were. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just everyone knew it. They were that's where they were, right? So if you had a small, I was in Brooklyn, so there's 100 of those places. Like, they just if you like told everyone about it, they just move somewhere else. Like, that's how it is in Brooklyn. But if you live in a small town and you had a similar place, like a spa that was really just a brothel, lived in a small town, and so you decide, you know what we're gonna do? This is a brothel, and everybody knows it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna sit outside this brothel, and we're going to protest it, so that we see exactly who's going in, and we see exactly who's going out. And all of a sudden, everyone who's going in, they're going to be people we know. They're going to be business owners. They're going to be people that the PTA, stuff like that. And we're going to boycott all of their stuff. People would stop going. That brothel would shut down. So tactically, that would actually be something, strategically, I guess I should say, that might be a strategic boycott to get rid of a brothel in your small town. But the thing is, like in Brooklyn, that won't work.
Yeah,
because there's a million brothstrokes in a small radius.
Yeah,
and nobody cares. you know what I mean? So,
right.
So Netflix is like the Netflix thing strikes me as trying to boycott, brothels in Brooklyn versus like a small town like where I live. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's not going to work. Like I said, like Target, Dick's Sporting Goods, when they were saying they weren't going to sell guns anymore, that was trying to be a boycott, but they're doing great. Yeah. Netflix isn't going to be hurt by this.
Yeah.
And that's interesting when you think about, because we as Christians kind of boycott, quote unquote, Planned Parenthood, right? We do that same kind of thing where we're picketing.
Sure.
Like, is that even a strategy worth fighting?
So Chad Fontes makes a good point. He's making a lot of good points today.
No, he's not.
If we boycotted every company that did something sinful, we'd have to be farmers. That's true. But But I can see in my example, we wouldn't have to boycott everything, but we'd have to boycott an egregious sort of thing that we actually do have a degree of control over, because we live in a small town, and everyone that goes into that brothel, we would see them and we would know what they're up to. And we're going to boycott John's. If you own a business and you're a John, we're going to boycott you. So then it would go out of business. I think that in general, every single company that did something sinful, yeah, he's 100% right. I do, though, have respect for people that say this, like, well, look, I don't agree with this, and I'm not giving them money to produce more of this, so I'm just not going to give them $1. See, that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But I think like to like try to organize these like, I don't know. It's just not my thing. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on that.
I don't know.
You do know, it sounds like. Very fun.
I really don't. Because I actually do think about these things a lot of times. For example, I'll say this. So Disney Plus came out. I do have a subscription, but it kind of makes me feel a little, it grinds my gears that this company owns ABC that killed that Epstein story.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm giving them cash. I'm obviously not saying that I'm part of the cover up. I'm not saying that, but it really grinds my gears that I'm giving them cash, and this company is very immoral. So I struggle with this. This is something I think about a lot. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, it seems like those are going to be questions that we're going to be continually.
Look at Liam. It's a great question. Entertainment is a non-necessary. Why not boycott something we don't need? Just a thought. It's a good point. These are the things I think about.
Yeah, just imagine what we could be doing instead of watching garbage Star Wars. And that's not even a dig at UAD. That's a dig at Chad over there. Because he is a Star Wars geek and always tweets about it, and somehow I get in the threads and it drives me nuts.
Well, that's fun.
On that note, we should end. But I just want to say this to end on this. I think a good gauge of how we're doing in the culture wars is to see this time of year of how many people and businesses say Merry Christmas again. Because as long as we're doing the happy holidays thing, I think that is a good metrics for us to keep. I'm a data guy again. It's a good annual metrics to check in on. When companies start being able to say Merry Christmas again and not having fear of backlash because of the people that have a lot of pull and authority and culture, then I feel like we're going to be in a place again where we can start leveraging things. But if we can't even say Merry Christmas without 1,000 qualifiers, that just shows how weak of an influence Christianity has in our culture. In my opinion.
Let me just say this. I used to say happy holidays because I thought it was a nice thing to say. And now I feel like I can't, because now I'm supposed to say Merry Christmas.
I say it in work settings because I know everyone's scared to do it. And you would not believe how many people will reply back, like in an email or on Merry Christmas to you too. It's like you're setting them free and this flower is blossoming where they've been repressed and holding on to it. Like, I can't say it because I'll be called a discriminatory person against Kwanzaa or some Seinfeld holiday. And then you say it.
I always get
like the day changes.
I always get plus up a little respect when someone tells me Merry Christmas. I'm like, oh yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Like we're on the same team. It's like, yeah, I'm right there with you. I celebrate that Jesus too.
One time I said Merry Christmas to a Muslim, and then I was like, oh yeah, you're Muslim. He goes, no, it's okay. Oh, right on, man.
I'm telling you, there is only a small subset of people that get offended by Merry Christmas. And it's usually not other religious people. I guarantee that, because they don't want to be censored as well. Like, there's like some kind of mutual respect along with religious people. It's people in New York, San Francisco, and Hollywood that get all in a tizzy about it. So take that as for what it's worth. All right, let's end it there. Thank you for joining Reformgelical. My name is Matt Williams, saying goodbye on behalf of all of us. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.
Adios.